What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing a multitude of builders across Web3. Talk about a bucket list interview today. I remember doing deep dives into Deloitte years ago. Super excited to have Kim Schneider with us. She is the enterprise blockchain lead within Deloitte. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things adoption-wise within blockchain distributed ledger technology across enterprise and institutions. And definitely going to be focusing on ESG and environmental and social impact as well. But always like to start these out with an intro. First off, I want to give a shout out to the Hashgraph Association for helping us to put this together. Kim, I would love if you could kind of walk us in here and tell us a little bit about your background and role within Deloitte's blockchain and digital assets division as we kick off.
Yeah, sure, Ryan, and thanks for having me here today. I'm working indeed as the enterprise lead of the Web3 transition at Deloitte since 3.5 years. So mainly focusing on helping the enterprise clients, the traditional clients of Deloitte into this transition with the use of new technologies. But on the other hand as well, we're helping the crypto native companies to become compliant, for example, with regulations. And in the end, we want to bring this to different worlds together, right? Because I think that helps the adoption most. And previously, I worked for 10 years at Rabobank, one of the largest banks in the Netherlands, but also very well known globally. And also, worked in their innovation blockchain department for a few years. So already out there in the Web3 space for almost 8 years. So really excited to tell you more today about what's happening currently in the space from a Deloitte perspective. But also, happy to share all my knowledge I gained the last 8 years.
Awesome. No, I think what's really interesting is, Deloitte, the largest professional services firm in the entire world. So obviously massive. And I'm curious from your stance, like if you could just give us a little bit of an overview of how Deloitte kind of acts at the intersection of traditional industry, enterprise, and blockchain and Web3, because I feel like those solutions integrators are really kind of the most important entities for real world adoption of the technology. Mm-hmm. So how do you guys kind of fill that role?
Yeah, I think we can fill in that role from multiple perspectives, right? Because I think in the end, we already have a lot of well-known clients worldwide. So, and we know them very well because we help them or with their audits or with regulatory perspectives or being compliant, risk frameworks, innovation. So we help them on different points. So I think that already really helps, because if we already have an SAP integration, for example, we already understand how that's working at the client side. And then when, I would say the blockchain part comes in somewhere that is more easily to integrate and to help them with those kind of topics. And with regards, for example, with digital assets, I think companies need frameworks, right, where to move into and where are the boundaries, to say so. And I think Deloitte is very good at creating those kind of frameworks. And of course, there's also more and more regulations upcoming. For example, in Europe, we now have the marketing crypto asset regulation. So then we understand that regulation very well, and then we can help clients with implementing those regulations and frameworks. And that also goes for the crypto native companies that also need some help on where to move and where does it start, where does it end, and how can they fulfill their propositions.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things is that we've seen is there's been tons of kind of proof of concepts. Like you can go back probably about a decade ago, and there was like definitely some real big entities doing, some proof of concepts with these networks. Yeah. I'm curious from your stance, we still haven't seen, we've seen a lot more real world adoption over the past, I would say specifically like 12 months, 18 months. Why do you think a lot of these networks kind of struggle to reach production level engagements with enterprise and institutions, or product market fit within the enterprise level? Like, how do you help kind of bridge the gap there? Is it like directly solving problems that these enterprises have? Or I guess maybe we start with, why do you think some of these networks haven't seen like production level kind of engagements with these firms yet?
Yeah. I agree with you, because I'm also already for 8 years in this space, and in my personal opinion, it goes too slow, right? I also want to have more adoption and more real life applications. But from my personal experience, I really see that it all has to do with the collaboration between different companies in an ecosystem. So most of the time, it does not really have to do with what the technology can offer and how you can build upon it further and how you can integrate it. But it really starts with making good agreements and governance frameworks within your ecosystem and how to collaborate and what next steps you really want to make with those different kind of stakeholders and partners. And I think that step is really missed sometimes, right? So then we go back indeed like 6 years ago, oh, we have a problem and let's use blockchain for it. But I don't think that's the, that's the solution. And that was what was happening a lot, right? So that we thought, okay, blockchain can solve everything. And of course, that's not true. And the same goes for cryptocurrencies. Yes, they are very well, very good to use and to do a global payment from here to the other side of the world in a few seconds. But it's not that they will take over the whole global payment system in a year, to say so. So I think it really has to do with not seeking for the solution and using blockchain for a problem, but mainly seeking for it in different kind of supply chains, different ways of working, and how you can collaborate in a more efficient and effective way, and then use the technology for that part. And it's also, like I said, it's also a part, right? It's not like the solution is only blockchain or only tokens or only crypto. Most of the time, it's just, one small part in the bigger picture and the bigger solution.
Sure. And I think one of the interesting things, just as a sidebar, is like, I think we have not only in like traditional enterprise with, you mentioned collaboration. We've seen like even like blockchain networks, like distributed ledger tech, like layer one networks, like for the first time, I would say starting to actually collaborate, like interoperate or find use cases that make sense between networks. That shift just started, I don't know, again, about probably a year and a half ago. We started to kind of see these networks start to maybe work together and figure out ways to solve pain points. And I think that's interesting too, because like even these native blockchain networks, they have corresponding relationships that they've developed with traditional entities, and they've developed trust. And I think that's kind of cool to watch, that we're starting to see a little bit of interaction between even networks native into this industry as well.
Yeah, I agree. And indeed, I think that's very important as well, because, we help, of course, a lot of different enterprises, and then they come to us like, what kind of network should I use? But in the end, you want something that is interoperable within a few years with their whole supply chain and ecosystem they collaborate with, right? And I think that's very important. And if you cannot, at least forecast a bit how that will look like, then they are also very hesitant to make decisions now for the future.
For sure. I would love your take on this, because I know that there is like a differentiation between distributed ledger technology and like crypto, like the underlying cryptocurrencies that kind of that run these networks to an extent. When you guys get into discussions with enterprise and institutions, how do you tackle like the education standpoint between network infrastructure and digital asset? Like, is there a separation? Like, what kind of process is that?
Yeah, sometimes there is. I think it really depends, of course, like you said, on the knowledge level of the people that are in front of us, to say so. Some people are knowledgeable already, and I think there are more and more people having more knowledge on these topics than a few years ago. But yes, the sentiment is always very hard, to say so, for our conversations on the blockchain side, when crypto, of course, is going down or is really bad in the news. Then it's always touched upon, and also the energy, the high energy usage of Bitcoin is always a topic. So yes, of course, I'm always trying to at least have an educational session to make sure all those kind of things that, to say so, are not true are out of the way before we start a project, because otherwise it will come back every time in your conversations. And for us, I think it's twofold, right? Because we help crypto native companies, but we also do help our traditional enterprises. And in the end, I think we want to bring them together, like I said before, but that also means, that we need to educate both. And also, if crypto is up or down, it should not really make that much sense for the use of the underlying blockchain or DLT technology. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the interesting things is like, and I've kind of seen this in a couple of these interviews, is that I think the things that are actually being adopted at like at real world scale are like things that like aren't like maybe not super sexy to like retail participants that are like sitting on Twitter, but are actually like, you know, creating impact. And like, for those that aren't aware, there are like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, here, but there's like global green initiatives that lead us out to certain times. You know, 2025, I think, was a big year, if I remember correctly. 2030 is certainly one, even leading all the way out to 2050, to the point that like environmental and social impact, and having platforms that can facilitate like the transparency and just the efficiency and that are just inherently green aren't going to like be, at least from what I've seen, aren't going to be like requested. They're going to almost be mandated that people are using, you know, platforms that they can either prove something or, you know, or prove that everything's basically green. So maybe walk us through that a little bit as far as like the real world use cases before we get into the ESI platform that you do see, you know, making some impact. Just kind of in general with that. So.
Yeah, I think a nice story to tell is that a few years ago, when I was still working at Rabobank, we were already researching different kind of platforms that were out there for the carbon credit world. And back then, that's like 5 years ago, I already could find some platforms that were using blockchain technology. So I think that was very good. But then they did not provide sometimes all the source information, for example. So then you only had a hash. But if you don't know what the hash means, right? So if you're, like you said, a retail customer, then it still does not make a lot of sense. So, but from that 5 years ago until today, I still did a lot of research on the sustainability side and the applications and all the platforms that are out there around this topic. And I think it's really growing really fast, but it also has to do with platforms like Hedera, for example, that have these tooling and all these technological components that you can use and reuse, and an ecosystem that's growing around that to build on top of their layer. And I think that really helps, because that makes life easier if you can, of course, reuse some parts and tools that are already out there and also connect that in the ecosystem. So I think that really helps. And I think it's also really important, because I think a lot of stuff that's happening in the carbon credit space is not transparent, and companies are just buying carbon credits because they have to, but they don't really look like what's the quality. I think it's more and more a topic. They care more and more about high quality carbon credits. Until now, there's only a small percentage that is qualified as a high quality carbon credit, for example. So there's a lot of work to do here, and also a lot of space and room for different companies to develop different kind of platforms.
So, I mean, I know right within here. So this is Deloitte's environmental and social impact platform. I believe it runs on Hedera and leverages the Guardian on Hedera. Just as maybe some broad knowledge before we hop into here, what is the problem that exists with like greenwashing, like, so that people can kind of understand what that is?
Yeah, of course. So if you claim that you have reduced your carbon emissions, but you did not, for example, that is related to the greenwashing. So you say you're doing very well and very green, but in the end you cannot state that the claim is really made. But it's also a bit sad, because a lot of companies, of course, don't know. So they think they did well with buying carbon certificates and all those different kind of products that are out there. But if you cannot rely on the underlying source, then it will become really hard to make the claim also valuable. So that's what's happening at the moment. So a lot of companies buy these credits, they don't know, and then in the end they will get a fine because they greenwashed and they said they did things very good that they did not. So I think that's a shame, because I think the intention of those different companies is good, right? They just want to make sure their emissions are lowered or offsetted by these carbon credits. But then I think a lot of platforms don't offer the service to really go back to the source where the information is coming from.
So I think that leads me into kind of, we get into like transparency and traceability and kind of the use case of like these networks or these platforms that are built on top of these kind of distributed ledger networks. which gets, I'm assuming, right into kind of the digital MRV system. I'm assuming MRV is measurement, reporting, and verification. How does this kind of all work and tie into like Hedera and, you know, the Guardian platform and things like that? Like, is it kind of just under the hood, like people are using the platform, the ESI platform on Deloitte, and all the distributed ledger stuff is kind of abstracted away, or what's that look like?
Yes. So indeed, the people that are using the platform and that are in the field and doing measurements of different kind of trees, and in our example, it are mangrove trees, but it can also be other kind of trees, or it can be coral reefs, it can be all kinds of nature-based solutions. But you have to have a methodology that tells you how to measure those kinds of trees in this example. And then you will see some fields that you need to fill in. So you need to fill in your geolocation that's automatically popping in. You can make pictures of your measurements, and you need to fill in different kinds of metrics. So the platform is upfront already, telling you what you need to fill in. And nowadays that really goes still by pen and paper. So then you can make mistakes, and you maybe don't know, was this tree 1? Or was this a calculation from tree number 10, you know? So I think that really helps the people that are in the field to do their measurements. So they see just like a normal user interface, scrolling through the application, filling in all those different kind of fields that are requested. And then indeed on the background, it is linked to the Hedera blockchain. So not all the data fields, but the specific ones that are necessary for the calculation are then safe stored on Hedera, and I think that's really helpful. And of course, still, if you make a mistake, right, then still not the right information is on the blockchain, but you can trace it back, and then you can maybe see very quickly where the mistake was made, for example. But you can also connect it to a drone, to drone data. You can also connect it to satellite data. So the more information we can gather around the measurements that are being made, the more accuracy you will have on your data. So we tested the platform last year in Curacao, and we collaborate there with different kind of local partners. And we also have a Deloitte at Curacao, and we also partner together with the HBAR Foundation to get funded to build the ESI platform, and also to do this pilot last year in Curacao. So we tested it in the field, and of course we gathered a lot of different kind of learnings out of there, because not everything works the way you want it to work, but that's what the pilot is for. Yeah. For example, an internet connection was very useful. That made us create an offline process, right? I think that's also really necessary, because not everywhere in the world you will have a proper internet connection to upload your photos you have made. So, and we try to use everything that's already out there with regards to methodologies, because a lot of universities already did good research, so we reuse that. But with adding all those different kinds of metrics and points, you can really create verification by design, as we call it, and really trace back to all the pictures. So we really want to make it transparent. And what you see here is the dashboard, and I really hope in a few months we will also put this out there online, so that you can see the mangrove project from Deloitte, that you can trace all the different kind of measurements we did, and how it all started, right? So that you really have, all necessary information.
I'm curious, maybe a couple things. Hold on one second. I'm trying to write down some notes here. So the first one, so, you know, you guys put all this time and you kind of do this coordination for, you know, this pilot. And I'm curious, like from Deloitte's standpoint, like where does a pilot like this go? I know, like, you know, the United Nations has sustainable development goals. I know that there's a bunch of like major global entities that are kind of, I'm assuming, like would be very interested in this type of information. Like, where do you guys as kind of Deloitte take a pilot study like this and either decide next steps or showcase it to potential stakeholders? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's also why I called it environmental and social impact platform, because I think the social aspect here is also very important. We don't only want to calculate the carbon that is measured, but we also want to make sure that we connect with local communities and also with different kind of universities and, for example, companies like United Nations, like you said. So we collaborate here with Wageningen University, and they are in the Netherlands, but they're very well known worldwide also for their nature-based knowledge. And indeed, if this project is finalized, to say that the pilot is totally finalized, we really want to create as well a case study and put it online on the dashboard and share this knowledge with everyone who wants to read it. Because what I learned from this project is that the knowledge from specifically the Caribbean is not that high as, for example, in Asia with regards to mangroves. So I think it's really important to share all those kind of insights. And I think, it's really important. We're also in the World Economic Forum working group of mangroves. So that's also a touch point where we share this information. So we really try to share it with a wider community, because it's all information that's useful for other projects as well. And I really hope to get this as well on the Deloitte global level, right? So that is conversations that I have right now. We gathered so much knowledge the last 2 years on this topic. There are other Deloitte firms worldwide that are also aiming for nature-based solutions. So please align and gather this information together and use as well the tooling that we already have.
I think that you bring up a really interesting point. That was where I was going to kind of take it next, is I would imagine, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I've kind of seen that it looks not only from like an ESG or ESI standpoint, even from like a financial standpoint, even from whatever, industry verticals you want to really tackle. I think like the majority of like data that is kind of out there in the world right now seems to be just like very siloed, either within a group of enterprises or even within an enterprise itself, or then you get into like environmental and social impact data. And as you mentioned, it's like, okay, well, we have this amazing pilot study that we got all this information from, what other studies have been done as far as mangroves? I mean, as an example out there in the world, and what do you think is going to end up happening, like maybe 10, 15 years out with the way that this data looks? Do you think it defragments and almost becomes this really powerful tool kind of across multiple industries and players, or do you think it stays siloed in a respect?
No, I really think with regards at least to this nature-based solution topic, it will spread, because I really see that people that are into this topic are from the intrinsic motivation very willing to share. So I think that's different in different kind of industries, right? Sometimes we have industries where people like the being not transparent part. They don't want to have it traceable and transparent sometimes. But with nature-based solutions, I think that's really different, and they really want to learn from each other. Of course, at the university level, that's really the case. But I also see this on enterprise levels, also because they are afraid of the greenwashing part, but also that they really want to do good and bring this topic further. So what I foresee is that the trend is that high quality will become the normal or the standards. So if we want to have high quality projects in the world, we really need to collaborate with each other and share all the different kind of data points. Luckily, there are already platforms out there that already share, like, where are mangrove forests, for example, and what is already being measured. So I think it's already upcoming and coming more and more the standard to share as well. And there are also a lot of verification bodies like Verifiable standards that are also expanding their views and also incorporate more views from different kind of companies to make sure the high quality will be built in. So I think that's only good news. But I think the transparency part of Web3 and blockchain and tokenization, right? So creating tokens out of the carbon credits will also be a part of that and will help this transitioning of the data sharing and also the transparency part.
I think that's an interesting point you bring up too. Like, and I'm curious what your take is on this. Like, I would imagine that, maybe I'm wrong here, but I would imagine that like carbon credit markets might not be the most maybe liquid thing right now. But maybe I'm totally incorrect there. But like, what is your view on that in the future? You mentioned like tokenizing carbon credits. Do you feel like there's going to be like, new markets that come off the back end of tokenization of carbon credits that are like, authentic, able to be authenticated and verified and transparent? Like, what does that kind of look like to you? Because I think that's pretty interesting, right?
Yes, it is, because it really also depends on what you want to do on this market and where you're using the carbon for, right? Because our first intention now with our own mangrove project in Curacao is to use it for Deloitte. So then you don't really need tokens to sell them, for example, to other companies that need to offset. But and I think that's also more and more a trend. That's what we call insetting, so that you use the carbon emissions for your own costs. And I think that's happening more and more. But in the case that you want to sell because maybe you have bought too much or you don't need it anymore for your own emissions, I really think it's very important to know where it's coming from, what is the data source, right? What is all the added information, like I told you before, that you really know that the carbon credit is not already booked on the balance sheet of company A and company A is selling it to B, that it's used twice, right? I think that's really the point of the double spend part as well from tokenization. So I think that that's really important, so that you know more information, more transparency on the credit itself, because you can already see now in different registries what's happening. But I think, there can be added more information to it to make it more trustworthy. But in the end, I think also more liquid in the 10 to 15 years future vision you told.
Yeah,
that helps.
It's well, I know that this is. Oh, I won't go off topic yet here.
Otherwise, we're only talking carbon. Yeah,
but I will in a second. No, and I think I see here even within the solution that you have here mentioned that there's sustainable development goals that are adhering strictly to ESG, CSRD, SFDR, digital product passport regulations. Kind of in the vein that I mentioned, like very early on in this, like what does the landscape look like as far as regulations around green initiatives, like in the future for you? Like, do you feel like having the transparency, do you feel like that's going to like almost be mandated? And I guess if that's the case, how far off do you think we are from that kind of like mandation of like making sure that this stuff is authentic, able to be authenticated, transparent?
Yeah. So if you would have asked me this question 6 to 12 months ago, I would have said we were very close by, because regulations are popping up really quickly as well on the sustainability part, as on the circularity part for digital product passports, and also, of course, for crypto assets itself. But now with also changing environments and geopolitical environments, it's a bit different, I would say. So it's a bit more uncertain at the moment, particularly on the sustainability side. And also in the European Union, the regulations for CSRD now changed again. So that's not helping, Ryan, to be honest. But still, I indeed think it will become more mandatory. Also in the Digital Product Passport Act for batteries, they're stated there should be a decentralized infrastructure. So if that's in the regulations, of course, that will help us expand the usage of Web3 and the underlying infrastructure. So I foresee that it will be coming more quickly, and also with the use of other technologies like AI, I really have good hopes that the coming 5 years will evolve more quickly than the last 5 years.
Yep. So you mentioned AI and digital product passports. Like, I'm curious your take. I guess I will go off topic briefly. So I saw yesterday there was a Deloitte document or quote pulled leading us towards like tokenization as like kind of a topic here. Like, real estate obviously is an industry that we've been kind of talking about like real estate overlapping with blockchain since as long as I got into blockchain. It was like 2016 these discussions were happening. But there's like a couple of studies kind of hitting back to back. One was Deloitte. I think the other one was I want to say Deutsche Bank, that lead us out to 2035. I think the Deloitte statistic that was referenced was like an estimate of like around 4 trillion real estate tokenized by 2035. I think Deutsche Bank said 84 trillion impact of tokenization. 84 trillion is a really big freaking number, because if you look right now at like, global tokenization of RWAs on across these networks, there's some aggregator sites that I feel like probably don't have the full number, excluding stable coins, let's say around 50 billion as a broad statistic. Like, what are your thoughts just on what's kind of happening right now with RWA tokenization, just as kind of an off-topic situation? Just in general, how early do you think we are in this space? How much work needs done from a regulatory clarity standpoint? maybe just broad thoughts on tokenization in general.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think if you ask 10 people, they will get 10 different answers, right?
And everybody's wrong, by the way.
I think everybody is wrong indeed, because I think, the one will say it's going now really quickly. In the last couple of years, we made a lot of progress there, and I'm also in a European Union, right? So I think perspectives also differ from other sides of the world. But in my experience, indeed, it also has to do a lot with regulations. So I know from different banks in Europe that they try to tokenize their bonds, or they try to tokenize their mortgage portfolio. They really did a lot of different experiments, but most of them were one-off. So they got some waivers from the regulator to do those kind of pilots, but it's not that then it's implemented and used on a daily basis, right? So, and you need to do those kind of pilots to also change the regulation and to let the regulator see that it's also possible in a different way. So I'm really proud that at least a lot of companies are trying and doing these POCs. But I think we're not there yet. So I think it will take still a couple of years to say so before it gets adopted more often. And like you also said with real estate, I wrote my master thesis about sharing lease agreement information on a blockchain-based system. And that was indeed, like I said, 7 years ago. So, and still, I think there are pilots, there are companies and countries that are working on it, but it's also not that you can invest in every country in real estate, for example, with 100 euros and that you get one piece of a token, right? So I really would love to see it. And I think it will be there. But I still think it goes, a bit slowly, but steady but slowly, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think it's interesting because I think we see some in blockchain, and I'm sure this is the same way with any kind of new innovative like industry. We see like use cases that come out that I think are just way. I don't necessarily think tokenization is in this regard like too early, but I do think like micropayments is a good example of that, because there was like micropayment platforms in blockchain and just distributed ledger back in like 2016, 2017, and then it kind of went away for a little while. And now I'm seeing a lot of like talk about micropayments again. And like, I think that's kind of interesting that there's so much innovation in the space. And I think a lot of like grassroots innovation is driven from like the retail sector with like developers and kind of grassroots community building, which is really kind of cool. And I guess the one question I have, and you bring up an interesting point, is it's not like every jurisdiction in the world is like, oh my God, like it's going to save our country if we just tokenize this piece of real estate tomorrow. Like every single country has different pain points that they're trying to tackle. What have you kind of seen? Like I'm sure exotic corridors, like with the mangrove trees, for an example, is one example. But what do you see as far as like pain points across different jurisdictions in the world, and where blockchain might be a fit and how it differs?
I really think that goes for all kind of different solutions with blockchain. So if you talk about payments or the token side of things, I really think it depends on how far evolved a country is and how well everything is working. So I have this discussion as well in my team or with other people that are in Web3. Like in the Netherlands, we have a very good payment infrastructure. So I will grab my phone, I will pay with my phone or with my smartwatch, right? It's really easy. But if you're in a country where you don't have a bank account, right, I think these examples are very well known, then a wallet, a crypto wallet is very useful. And I think the same goes for the real estate question. Like if you have everything well settled, the ownership is well known and registered in a good registry, then maybe the question is, why should you need a blockchain infrastructure to capture all these data? And I think the efficiency here is if everything was on blockchain, right? So if you have your digital identity and you have your ownership registered for your house and you want to transfer it, and if I want to sell my house to you, Ryan, and then we go to the blockchain and we sign the transaction and then the ownership is settled. I think that's the ideal world, but then you need really a lot of different kind of stakeholders. You need the regulation indeed in your favor. So it has to do with so many different kind of components, and you need to start somewhere, right? Because otherwise it will never be there and it will never be more efficient. But I really like I said in the beginning, it really depends as well on where you are in the world, how your jurisdiction is working, if it's working very easily or not, and also power within different kinds of jobs, I would say. So if the notary has less to do, right, I think that also, it has impact. And I think we will get there. And AI will also have a lot of impact on our daily job. So we will get there some day and at some point. But I really think it's a combination of all those kind of different elements.
Yeah, I think, it's almost like there's this expectation. We were kind of talking a little bit beforehand, just like the difference in mindset between different kind of groups that are leveraging Web3. And from like the retail perspective, like if you go to crypto Twitter, there's a lot of like, there's going to be a flip. There's some imaginary flip or switch somewhere that's just going to be flipped and everything goes blockchain. And I guess from what I've seen, like through these types of interviews, and thank you so much again for joining us. It's almost more about like meeting users where they're at. And it doesn't matter if it's, we talk about crypto and blockchain all the time. It's like, we still see like networks competing with each other, which is great, but like 90 to 95% of the world still isn't onboarded into blockchain, and that's for a reason. So like if in 15 years, I think that we're going to be in a blockchain landscape where I still have to do all these manual things to engage or interact with the blockchain, I think that that's not probably what's going to happen. So I think it's interesting about, kind of meeting users where they're at, whether they be enterprise, institutional, or even just the mass populace. Yeah. And you bring up an interesting point. How many people are unbanked versus how many people have a cell phone? And I mean, that's like a pretty drastic statistic. I mean, billions of people are not banked. And many more people than that are, actually have cell phones. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
And I think that's also, where the traction for stablecoins will come from, right? So I really think other use cases in blockchain will get a boost as well if stablecoins are more used, also by enterprises, I would say, because I think a lot of retail and crypto people understand the value of the use of a stablecoin. But if we get traction on the enterprise side, that will really help the other blockchain use cases as well.
I would love if you could kind of walk us through maybe just an overview, and a huge shout out to the Hashgraph Association again for helping us to put this together. But what is the relationship that Deloitte has with, different players across Web3? What's the relationship within the Hedera ecosystem look like? Hashgraph Association, whichever way you kind of want to go with that would be great.
Yeah. So at Deloitte, we really believe we need different kind of partnerships in this space to make it more successful. So a few years ago, we already spoke to the Energy Web Foundation and to see if we could partner with them and also run a validating node. So we really wanted to learn as well how those kind of partnerships are working, also to advise our clients on the different kind of blockchains. And of course, we also want to be agnostic, right? So we're still Deloitte, so we don't want to have one partnership with one party because then we are not agnostic anymore. So it started, a few years ago with Energy Web, but later on, indeed, we also came into contact with Hedera. We also had discussions on shall we maybe join the council or not. Well, we're still not in their council, but we have a partnership with the Hashgraph Association. We came in contact with them because of the ESG vertical they have with Guardian, with all the different kind of elements and tools and software they already have that we could reuse for our environmental and social impact platform, which was really great because, we got funded, but we also got a lot of support, of course, on the technical side. So that was, a really good experience to say. So I'm really happy that we collaborated on that part. And currently we are seeking for what's next because Web3 is very broad. And like I told you, we also do a lot of different kind of topics in our team and at Deloitte globally. So that's the current discussion we have with Hedera to see like, okay, we have the ESG part, but also let's expand on identity, on digital product passports, on other kind of solutions that might arise at our clients and that are also arising at the Hedera ecosystem and platform. And I think one other thing that I am really proud of, at least, is that we tried last year as well to do a proposal on the Polkadot network because we wanted to create a blueprint where we can help enterprises on how to interact with a DAO, right? How to interact with a decentralized autonomous organization, because I think that's really hard for some companies and they don't understand. But that's also where jurisdiction came in again, because we wanted to collaborate with Polkadot, but Polkadot is not an entity because it's a DAO. So yeah, from the regulation point of view, we could not do business with them. And I think that's, of course, a shame, because we really wanted to learn more on their ecosystem, and as well creating this blueprint for enterprises worldwide to know where are the hurdles, where to look at if you're interacting with a DAO instead of having the Chamber of Commerce overview, right? So I think if we could have proceeded that, it was really interesting and it was really helping the enterprise Web3 world. But at least I'm proud we tried, and maybe we can retry again anytime soon. But yeah, so that's how we look at it. So we really try to interact with different kind of ecosystems, and also to learn by doing, right? So we also received, for example, cryptocurrency payments to also let the Deloitte organization know how does that work? How do you receive then your funds? Where does it come from? How to make sure we can comply with regulations, and also help our clients with receiving or sending cryptocurrency payments. So mainly happy and proud that we're practicing what we preach, right? Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, I think you mentioned, geopolitical changes and things like that. It seems like the United States, over the past handful of months, is making more headwinds as far as, seems like the low-hanging fruit that might get across the line first is stablecoin legislations. What do you think that potentially opens up for adoption of the technology, like in the States? Like if clear-cut stablecoin regulations get through, and does that open the door for additional kind of clarity for some of these firms to really kind of innovate? And what's that look like for you guys? You mentioned like some of the enterprises you guys deal with, as far as educating them or maybe even engaging them to make sure they're doing things with some clarity. But yeah,
I think that will help, because I think it's the opposite of what blockchain and Bitcoin was used for, right? So no regulations, no banks, so the opposite. But what I've seen lately is that, at least in Europe, it's really helpful that there's now a framework available. And we see a lot of traction the last couple of weeks and months on at least the stablecoin topic, right? So a lot of different companies are now interested, because, and like I said, I worked at Rabobank 5 years ago, and we already did some pilots back then with stablecoins, but at this moment they're still not using it, right? So I really hope for all the different kind of banks in Europe that now with those frameworks they will get into it. And I think the same goes for the US indeed, and I think the impact might be even bigger, because there are also a lot of big crypto exchanges there, and it might be really nice, because we already help those kind of companies, right, on the both sides, that we can really provide them with extra traction, and that it will go a lot quicker if we can help the enterprise side as well on using the stable coins. And also, I think the hardest part for them at the moment is like more the business case, right? You really need to have the network effect, like you have all your stakeholders in your network can also receive and pay with those kind of stable coins. That's where it's it's providing traction, and where it goes really fast. And at this moment, if you have a wallet and I don't have it, then it's really hard to interact with each other. So, but I think the legislation and the boundaries will really help in the adoption.
Yeah. You told me I want to give a shout out to Dovu real quick here. Dovu leverages the Guardian on Hedera as well. They've got probably, at the project and platform level on Hedera, probably the most comprehensive ESG platform, leveraging Garden as well. And that's not sponsored content. That's just a shout out to Dovu, Matt, and Irfan and the whole team there. But Kim, I know we were talking environmental and social impact, and obviously the Deloitte platform that leverages Hedera here as well. But I think I maybe want to broaden out the question a little bit as we kind of ramp down here. What are your thoughts just kind of on the overall societal impact that blockchain and distributed ledger are going to kind of bring in the future? Like, do you think it gets pretty much injected into our everyday lives, I guess, is the real question, because right now we're kind of in this niche little area. Do you think that expands out?
Yes, I do think so. I really think, indeed, in the future, you don't notice anymore that you're using it, right? I think that goes for all the products that we use in daily life, that we don't know the underlying technology. I think it will really help, indeed, different kind of communities. What I see, at least at the ESG side, is that if you're transparent about what you're doing, not only for the carbon part, but also for the societal impact, right? How many people are there doing work for us? What do we pay them? I think if you think about those kind of extra options you would have, you will have them now as well. But if you post them in your own year reports, then maybe people don't believe it. So if you can put more transparency and data on Web3 like applications, I think that will really help and also foster inclusion, right? So in different kind of countries where people are underpaid, or if it's more known, I think that will at least help. And I think Web3 helps in that sense for transparency, efficiency gains. So I think that that is what we will see more often. And also, the point we already touched upon on the payment side, I think it also gives more floor and opportunity for more people in the world to do different kind of transactions. And with regards to the digital product passports, I also really think that we will have a future where you really know where all your products are coming from. And sometimes maybe you don't really want to know, but I think, the next generation is more focused on the sustainability side and where are my clothes coming from? And is it not fast fashion? And what am I eating, right? It's also more plant-based and stuff like that. So I really think, we go more towards a world where we can trace our goods and food and all those kind of stuff.
My wife and I watched we watched the documentary on food dyes like a month ago, and I'm just like, and in the United States, there's a lot of stuff that's legal in the US as far as what you eat that is just not legal in a lot of other areas. And I'm always like wondering now, because like I do look at ingredients on food, and I've always looked at them. But I'm always wondering, like, okay, so like there's something that always pops up. Like I know to watch for like red dye 40 and blue dye, whatever, and yellow dye, whatever. But then I see like caramel color, and I'm like, what? But I don't know. I'm like, what goes into caramel color? I'm like, it certainly is like, there's not just like, I can't farm caramel color. There has to be stuff that goes into it. So I agree. I mean, I think the product passport stuff is just going to inherently be there. I mean, it kind of has to be. And that's one of the solutions that I've seen be like talked about, that is just going to be, it's one of the things that's actually being adopted right now for the transparency of what blockchain and distributed ledger bring. I'm rambling this morning, but anyways, thank you for bearing with me. I would love if you could walk us out, Kim, with telling us what you're most excited about with the near term for Deloitte and the work that you guys are doing, just kind of in general. And thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, sure. So for coming year, I think everybody is saying this, but I really think it's the year of the stablecoin. So I'm excited because I worked at the bank. So I really am grateful that now it will finally happen. And I think there's already a lot of traction, and I think there will become more and more traction as well in the European Union on a stablecoin that's in euros, right? So I think the US dollar market is already up front of us. So I think it's nice to have more traction here as well. And with regards to that, I think, the crypto market is also going quite well, I would say, overall. So we also see more maturity, and I'm also really looking forward to that, and also more transparency on reserves, for example. So that's also where we're building an asset for, which is called Deloitte Glass, where we are looking into like the ratio of 1-on-1 client reserves, right? So I think that's also helping trust in this industry, and also leveraging that to the enterprise side of things. So bridging this gap and bringing those two worlds together. And I'm really feeling that we're getting every day one step closer towards those kind of goals and towards those adoption. And I think also integration with other technologies. I'm not an AI specialist, but we have a lot of people working at Deloitte that are looking into the intersection of Web3 and AI. And I'm also really looking forward to that, because it can boost the Web3 ecosystem as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim. If for those that are interested, I definitely want to mention you can go to Deloitte.com and search for the environmental and social impact platform. Deloitte's turning net zero efforts for enterprise into verifiable impact. We talked about kind of greenwashing and, high quality carbon credits and what, networks, because ESI platform is built on top of Hedera and leverages Guardian, can facilitate. It'll be really cool to kind of see all the other work that you guys are doing. As we know, and you mentioned Deloitte is agnostic, so a bunch of different kind of blockchain networks. Hopefully we see some more innovation coming out of the Polkadot trials that you guys were starting to try to work on. I think we'll see some clarity that allows that. I want to give a huge shout out to the Hashgraph Association for helping us to put these together. Give these guys a follow at _Hashgraph as well. That being said, Kim, hang out with me here for a second as I ramp this down, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.